Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Work with What You Got podcast. My name is Devin, aka Dina Caitanya. This is episode number 10. As I said in the last podcast, I think if your podcast hits 10 episodes, that means it's going to go the full mile. But if your podcast doesn't make it to 10, then it generally doesn't make it very long after that. So this is number 10. So that means this podcast is going to make it. So that's great. So on today's episode, I have a very dear friend of mine, Adrian Nelson, who is many things, but he's a super good friend to me. He is a Reiki practitioner. He is a regression hypnosis practitioner. He is a tarot card teacher and reader. And that's actually what I know. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something.
So first of all, hi.
Yeah, welcome. Yes, welcome.
So, well, I'm a born intuitive. So
Yes,
I
okay.
was sort of born with like the gift. And it was quite a surprise to me when I actually realized that other people don't live life the way that I live it, because I've always been an introvert.
What's the gift?
You know, everybody thinks that when you're born with the gift, like sort of like you're naturally intuitive, you're naturally psychic, you naturally connect with spirits, I don't know, you see this world as the illusion and you go to sleep at night and you go back to your real life. And I assume that everybody sees life that way. And so I think in my curiosity, especially when I found out that people didn't, because what happened is I started to find life very stressful. It was very difficult for me to relate to life, and it was very difficult for people to relate to me. So and so, you know, things were a little bit upside down. And then I really first started with getting into Reiki, then crystal healing, then angel healing. Then I got into regression hypnosis, NLP. I've always been doing tarot. NLP, I've been doing tarot. I'm very into epigenetics. I've studied a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy. Not that much, really. I've done a couple of things. I've studied the Enneagram. I'm an astrologist. I'm an astrologist in training. I'm a numerologist.
Yes.
There's a lot. I'm very curious.
That's what I'm saying. You are a lot of things, but so how coming back to the first part before we get into all the extra bits and pieces, how did you know that, or when did you first realize that you were, I would say different, but you just experience life in a different way from the people around you? Like, what are some of the first things that started clicking in your mind? Like, hey, this is interesting because, you know, these people aren't doing or seeing or hearing the same things I am. So what were some of those experiences that happened?
Well, because I grew up in the country, whatever happened, you had to go. Funeral, 21st, wedding, birth, baptism, whatever was happening.
Oh, because it was a small community.
Yeah, it was a small community. So it went without saying that you are going. And I started finding funerals very confusing, and I couldn't really quite understand what was going on, because for some reason you were in like a wooden box over there looking quite bad, actually. And then simultaneously you would probably be chatting to me, next to me. And so I didn't really know what was going on, you know. And I mean, there were other incidences where I remember this one time where I told my parents that I got a bag of oranges from this man who I actually didn't know who died. And he died like a year ago. And I had a full-blown conversation with this man. And, you know, obviously my parents' eyes went really huge. And what do you mean? What are you talking about? So yeah, it was very, very interesting. And I think the reason why I study so many things is I am very fascinated by people. I really love people, you know, as you obviously know. And I like to understand them better. So why are certain things important to them? And, you know, what is the influence in their life? And why do they reason the way that they reason and do things the way that they do? And why does this make them tick? And why does that repel them? And other people, sort of like that simultaneous thing that repel you, other people think is the best thing on the planet ever. So I find humans interesting. And I think when you look at probably the world, but when you look at humanity, and you don't look to judge, you know, you don't look to sort of like categorize and classify and make anybody right and wrong, but you're looking to see and you're looking to understand. And you, I suppose for me personally, to understand, so I'm able to I can really say relate to you better and maybe even love you better because I understand that you are part of me. And so that in a sense is really what drives me in all the directions of my curiosities, which may seem so varied and all over the place. But to me personally, it's all sort of the same thing. It's a way of understanding people better, the world better, and myself better.
Yeah.
Myself.
So I've said this in a previous podcast, and I also linked to the idea is that some people think you should just focus on one thing. But for me, my one thing is doing many things. It's not that, that's my one thing. I'm good at doing a lot of things. That's one thing that I'm very good at, is doing a lot of things. And that's where I find my happiness. I love having different avenues to express myself through and to connect to the world through. Because if I was just singularly focused, it works with some people, but for me, I would feel very bored with just I'm just a businessman, I'm just a Reiki practitioner. I'm just an English teacher. I like having all of those things because it gives me an expression for who I am in different flavors of myself, So I get you. I get you. We love people that much that we needed many ways to connect to them.
Well, I want to be honest with you. Well, there's maybe two reasons for that. So one is in many ways, the world is sort of dystopian at the moment. So in many ways, I try to help as best I can to create a better world for myself while I am here, but also simultaneously using my life in service of others, especially for the next generation when I'm no longer here. Because, one of my things has always been that one of these days I'm going to be an ancestor. And so what sort of, I suppose, legacy do you really want to leave behind from your life? What did you do with your life, And everybody doesn't have to be on the same sort of point of view as me. That is just my point of view. And I think even if somebody just want to focus on one thing, that's perfectly fine as well. But with focusing on one thing, I think the one thing that you sort of like want to be open-minded to is just because your thing is perfect for you doesn't mean your thing is perfect for everyone else.
For everybody.
So, yes, I had like a couple of weeks ago, I had somebody who came to see me, and this person was just going off on a tangent about how there is no difference between numerology and astrology. And so this person's a numerologist, and they're exactly the same. And this went on for about 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, so you clearly well versed in numerology. So, and again, we had another tangent going off. So how well versed are you in astrology? Oh, not at all. So, well, then I don't actually understand why you have an opinion. But just to let you know, you have got an hour and 10 minutes of your time left. Congratulations on the 10th episode of your podcast. I think it's really awesome.
Thank you. And yeah, it's with you. So thank you for being here and for being the little milestone for the next rest of this podcast's life. So okay, so let's run back a little bit. So from what I gather from what you said is that you had sort of a different way of seeing and living when you were younger, or experiencing the world around you. You could see ghosts, you could speak to them, unbeknownst to you that they were dead sometimes. And I imagine that your parents didn't take to it very lightly, and you had to like sort of hide your gifts a little bit at some point. And so that's what drove you as you grew up. I mean, obviously having gone through some experiences in your own life, I mean, I would imagine that you pulled away from these types of things and then you came back to them, and then you went like full blown, this is what I'm doing, astrology, Reiki, past life regression, hypnosis, NLP, numerology, all of those types of things, because ultimately that's your calling, right? That's the gift you were given, is to work with these types of things. So am I right? Am I right in where I'm going with this?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't really say that I lived my childhood, let's call it, differently from what other people lived it, because I didn't really know how other people lived their lives. I was a very indoorsy child. I had no confidence whatsoever. There was a lot of personal turmoils and traumas and dramas and fighting, and there was a lot of very highly charged negative emotions that were happening around me when I was growing up, even as a child. So I would actually, and because it was in the country, everybody knows your business, and children can be cruel. So, and even since I was a child, I always found it difficult to relate to people my age. My friends were always, I would be like 10 and my friends were like 55 or something like that. And so it was a bit of a wake-up call for me when I realized that everybody doesn't live life the way that I live it. And so I suppressed so much of me, and it was such a scary thing. But I've always been interested in hypnosis. I've always been interested in hypnosis and tarot. For some reason, I didn't know how, but one way or the other, I always understood that somehow it will form part of my life. And I'm not recommending anybody to be defiant in life or anything like that. But when I was in school, I wasn't really very bothered with school. I wasn't concerned by school because I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, but I knew whatever it was, I wasn't learning it here. So I just wanted to get it, out of the way, because in South Africa, we've got 12 years of school. So and I've always, I'm incredibly intelligent in the sense that I think I'm very good at picking up patterns and things like that. And I'm very good at understanding things. I could always really understand body language, which made NLP very interesting for me to study, because I would always know things and I wouldn't know how. So when I studied NLP and they say this, it's like, oh, that's how I know that, that's how I know that, that's how I know that. So I think with doing all these different things, I just got a broader understanding of who and what human beings actually are, and the many different layers we have. And also, as much as we are different, we are really more the same as opposed to being different. We are very much the same in many, many ways. And for me, when somebody comes to see me, it is not about what your problem is. I couldn't really be concerned about what your problem is. I would rather want to understand why you are having the problem. And I think that is what really so strongly drew me to regression hypnosis, because do you want me to really go completely down into the whole past life thing already?
Yeah. So I was literally about to ask. So I have two questions. So
okay,
you said all of these things are helping you to understand humans better, which is wonderful, and that's a lot of what I do as well. It's to connect to people, basically. But and did it help you to understand seeing ghosts? Did it help you to understand that there was something beyond what we can see, feel, sense, touch, and experience? Because, I mean, it must have, some of these techniques must have opened your eyes to a deeper understanding of why you could see someone who was no longer actually here anymore. Because, I mean, not everybody can see a ghost. I mean, I can see them. I just
didn't know that.
I can see ghosts. I can see ghosts too, but I don't communicate with them. I don't want to, that's not my thing, but I can see them. I've experienced it many times before where I see a ghost, they'll flash past me, or, something will happen and I've got an image of who the person is in my mind. But for me, I don't talk to them. That's not my thing. I'm a bit too like, I don't know, maybe just I have a different skill set in that sense. But that's always boggled my mind, how am I seeing someone that's not actually physically here? They're here, but they're here in a different way, which was interesting to me, Yeah.
So to me, it was never difficult to wrap my mind around. I don't really know if ghost is the right word for me. Maybe spirit is a more accurate descriptive term, if
Sure.
I kind of look at it of how I used to understand things. So I didn't, because remember, I was born with it. So it wasn't a big deal to me. It wasn't something unnatural. It wasn't something amazing that you can achieve.
Yeah, it wasn't something that hit you somewhere and you're like, oh my word, what happened?
I just always had it.
Yeah.
So for me, the difficulty was actually wrapping my mind around what we would call being alive, having a body. To me, I could never really quite understand why it seemed that people were holding on to life so much. Why it seemed like such a terrible thing to die, even though I couldn't really quite understand what dying means. Because I think if you want to put it in my brain as a child, and I didn't really have anybody that I could ask, to me it sort of seemed like the flip side of that actually made more logical sense. But then, of course, I grew up and I started to go to school, and, I realized that I was different, and the fear came in, and, at some point the church came in, and, and I suppressed everything. So for a number of years, I actually suppressed my connection. And to me, that was quite a terrible experience, actually, because it's like bullying yourself. And it's like, I suppose it's like having having two arms, and, one is completely paralyzed for some reason.
But
so
it was self-inflicted.
And it was self-inflicted. So it's almost like it's paralyzed by an injection that it gets every day. Sure. But I give myself the injection. Yeah. So and I think for me, the better I understand people, the better I understand myself. Because I've always had this understanding that my life is about a lot more than just me. And so I suppose things like jealousy and animosity and bullying and, gossip and like all those conniving sort of things, none of those things actually really make sense to me ever. And I suppose the funny thing is I've never always seen like auras in like different colors, so to speak. Sometimes I will see like a color in it, but I see it more of an energy. But I could always see how when people do funny things, it's like these funny things are happening in your energy. So you kind of think like you've got clear water, and there's maybe like a little bit of murkiness that begins to go in. So it could smell bad.
So if they're lying, or if they're giving you like a false vibe of some sort, I also get that. Sometimes I can smell. This sounds weird, but sometimes I can smell that someone's full of shit. I'm just like, I just pick up that there's this, and sometimes I can pick it up for myself as well. Sometimes I realize I'm being full of shit. It goes both ways. So yeah, it's interesting that you say that.
I think for me though, it was never really about whether you're lying or not. It was more about the intention behind what you do. So even if you are handing out, bread rolls to street children on a snowy, rainy day, whatever, I would always be able to tell, even if I don't know you from your grain of salt, I would be able to tell whether your intention is actually pure or not.
Okay. And so coming back to the I guess the question was that, so how did all of these experiences that you had open your mind into the deeper understanding of life, like in terms of like once we die? So how did your progressions, or where did you start with this idea of death, and then where are you now with the idea of death? And you can incorporate past lives into that if you can. Yeah.
I think what I've noticed is that people are very fearful. And people have a lot of difficulty coping with life. They're afraid of dying. They're afraid of getting sick. They really miss the complete essence of life. So, and this is just in my personal opinion, but, even for example, I've always wondered at the idea of people saying you have to go to church, come what may. And I mean, I see these old people that have got wrecked with diseases and can hardly walk properly, and you go on your way to church. I mean, literally to each their own. So I wasn't judging it. I've always been curious as to what is the driving force behind why people do what they do. And I think when I sort of began to realize that other people are talking about things like what we would call past lives, for example. I never really had reference points for these things, but so when I heard other people speak about previous lifetimes and stuff like that, I got really intrigued by those things. It really resonated with me, and I realized there must be deeper understandings there.
So what you're saying is you didn't really fit the more like traditional dogmatic approach of religion. You were more inspired by the more esoteric, broad-minded approach to spirituality, basically.
Yeah, I realized that a lot of people, and not just religion is just a very big relatable sort of example.
Trauma point for a lot of people.
Yes, but or someone that works himself halfway to death when they sort of like They don't need to. And I somehow realized that human beings are driven by a lot of fear. And I wanted to understand what that fear is and why do you have that fear and where is this fear coming from and what does it sound like? Does it speak the same to everybody? Does it speak differently to other people? Why is it so powerful? Why is it so effective? So those were really my curiosity. So I didn't really set out with trying to, I think, help anybody initially. That was almost sort of like a byproduct of what I do, and a byproduct that I treasure very, very highly. But for me, it was really always about the curiosity. Why do people do what they do? Why do you practically break your back to go to, let's say, to church on a Sunday? And I just, really wanted to know what is the driving force. And when I came to find out that the driving force was fear, I said, well, so if you take, for example, the threat of hell away, then probably people are going to go there. And so what I was really curious about is there must be something inside of people that is somehow opening the gateway or the doorway or the attachment to, sort of like to this fear. Something inside of you must sort of connect to this message that's being given to you or this threat that's being given to you, and then you believe that it's from light and stuff like that. So really, I started off with curiosity. I wanted to understand because I was very confused, like as to what is actually going on.
Sure. So in my opinion, I think that people are scared of two things. They're scared of death and they're scared of their, like, anything to do with the body. So like ill health, punishment of some sort, getting old. Those are losing their beauty, losing their luster, all of those things. Those are the main driving forces behind people in a really basic sense. And it's interesting because with the idea of past lives, which should be a part of religions, in my opinion. I think that a lot of religions have, like, for instance, nothing against Christianity, but Christianity has been tainted and changed so many times. The Bible has been altered and yeah, so in the original copies of the Bible, at least according to the research I've done, they actually spoke about past lives. There was some reference to the fact that we have lived before and that we are a soul that migrates from, one lifetime to the next at the time of death. And if we understand that, it can alleviate a lot of the fear we have around the body. Because we understand, and this is not to take importance away from each and every life we have, but it's just to help alleviate that fear we have about losing this life, because we're so attached to everything that comes with the body, because we don't understand what happens at the time of death. So we think that when I die, that's the end of everything, right? I'm losing this body. Because I'm losing my body, I'm losing my family. Because I'm losing all of that, I'm losing my wealth. I'm losing my house. I'm losing my pets that you can maybe hear the dogs next door. And that's all fear-driven. It's all fear-driven because we lack the understanding of what death is actually about.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
You can't really lose it. You can't lose your life, you can't lose your body, you can't lose your money, you can't lose your car. You can't lose any of it because none of it is real. It's all just one massive illusion.
It's temporary, yeah.
Not real.
Yeah. It's not that it's not real. It's just temporary, because it is real.
It's real for us.
You can touch it, you can slap it, you can smack it, you can feel it. I can hold my cell phone. So it's real, but it's temporary, because at some point this and everything here is going to change into something else. So yeah, anyway, sorry, Karen.
I think maybe I should just add with that, because this is something got me, and I know this is something that many people as well. Just because it's not real doesn't mean you should treat it as if it doesn't exist, because it's real for you. And you are in the simulation by your own choice, and you're inside of the game, so you can just as well play the game. Otherwise, the game's not going to work for you.
And you might as well play the game in a good, healthy fashion, and do what you can to have a good game. Why waste an opportunity just because, I don't know,
if you go in a field and you play football or hockey or whatever you play that's involving a ball, you can either play the game or you can stand there and say, well, look at us. We're a bunch of idiots. We're chasing a ball. Then we're going to see who's going to get it in the net or through the poles or whatever the most. It's not even real, so why bother? And so you're standing on the field like this. I don't care. It's not real. Everyone's going to be like, boo.
What are you doing? You know, because at the same time that, like what you were saying about the gifts that you were given, everybody is given some gifts by the divine. You know, we all have it, and it's just up to us to discover what they are and then use that to have an effect or an impact on the world around us, you know, because we all can do that. And it's just about the level of effort we're willing to put in, because it takes effort to stand on the sideline and to do nothing, as much effort as it takes to actually do something in life. The reward from actually doing something in life is far greater, though, than just standing on the sideline and doing nothing. Yeah.
And if you really think about it, if you just humor this, you don't even have to believe in it, but just humor this. Imagine that you are a soul that is living forever. Forever is a very, very, very long time. You know, somebody's on this planet that make it like 100 years, and we have the biggest celebration, and it seems like such a long time, and you can write volumes and volumes on that person's life. So if you really think of forever, trillions and trillions of years, even longer than that, and you've always just been what you think is immediately there, as amazing as that sounds, after a while, if you really think about it, it becomes pretty dull. So you're probably going to want to do something enticing and exciting. And, you know, in the same way, if you are, for example, doing a Monday to Friday job, maybe Saturday you just want to unwind, and you want to be in the pool, and you have a barbecue or go to the beach or play with the kids or sleep late or whatever, watch the dog. And when we can almost think of Earth like that, you know, so yes, you come here to learn some lessons and, you know, to work with your karma, etc., etc., etc. But when you really think about it, what else do you have to do? So you're going to have to do something to, I suppose, entertain yourself from this eternal boredom. You know,
well,
but
yeah.
I mean, really think about it. Just imagine that you are born a complete heir to billions and billions of dollars. You'll never need to work in your life. You're born with whatever you have is there for you. The house is overly opulent or whatever it might be. You've traveled around the world. You've seen everything. You've done everything. You know, I don't know, had dinner with the royal family, whatever it may be. You've literally done it all. And now you're like, say, 40 years old. Like, what else are you going to do? You kind of get quite bored. And if you kind of make that picture broader and you think in the universal sense, forever is long. So Earth is really one of those blessings. This is a place where you come, where you can say, oh, I'd like to have that. And it takes a while to get there. And then you get it and you have the experience of it. And, you know, you can experience yourself as an individual. Just imagine that you're able to experience yourself as an individual versus the experience of understanding yourself as part of absolutely everything all the time. What do you think will be the most fun thing to do? To kind of forget that for a little while and to just sort of cordon yourself off. It's like when you go to this crazy, crazy party, and the party is rocking. It's the best party ever. But after a while, you know, the human immune system and the human nervous system and stuff like that's going to be like, I need a little break. And you're going to go take a walk in the garden or, you know, go sleep it off or something like that. Pretty much the same thing with the soul, you know? I think we overcomplicate these things too much and we make it this thing like past lives. It's like this thing that is so amazing and so incredible, and it's this special sort of thing. But it's very normal, because when you think about it, whether you're looking like 1 billion years back or you're looking 5 minutes back, all of those are technically your past life.
It's like relative, because time it's a new moment, right? So the old moment doesn't exist, so technically it's a past you, and then the lifetime you lived in the past life, that was a past you as well, in a different moment, in a different time, and now this moment is the one that matters. So this is interesting, because this is what I was saying about my journey with past lives. So I want to ask your experiences with it, so I'm just gonna vicariously get there through my experience. So I was saying in a recent video I made that I got so obsessed with past lives when I first heard about it, because I was like, I need to know everything. I want to know all the past lives I've had. I want to see exactly where I've come from, who I was, and blah, blah, blah. And that was my mindset. You know, I was a very curious person about these types of things. I love learning and understanding myself and the world around me. So yeah, I got too obsessed with it though, in my opinion, where I was so focused on it all the time that I felt like to myself that I stopped living and doing things here in the moment. Of course, I was a bit younger. So I mean, yeah, I just got too obsessed with it. And then I felt like I wasn't living enough in this life. So then I sort of came to this conclusion by myself where I was like, I need to be interested and keep this interest, but I also need to let it go a little bit, because ultimately those past lives, they've helped me to understand why I am a certain way and what I've come to this life with and what I can look forward to experiencing to some degree based on what I've done and who I was and blah, 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 and what issues I encountered and what issues have remained. But at the same time, it doesn't matter, because what I do right now in this lifetime matters the most. And I can do not what I want, but I can set my mind on something and create that regardless of what happened in a past life. Like regardless of what happened 5 minutes ago, I can do something completely different right now. You know, it's all just a present moment awareness, which I think is like the encompassment of understanding what has happened and, you know, where I am now. So that's what I was saying. I'm not negating my experience of having understood and seen and knowing where I've come from and who I was, but I'm just saying that to get too obsessed in these types of things, it can be like a divergent of this lifetime here and now, you know? So having said that, what has been your experiences with your own past lives and also your experiences? You can maybe talk a little bit about regression hypnosis, like what is that and how do you help people with your regression hypnosis therapy?
So let me actually quickly tell you how I got into it.
Yes, let's go with that. Yeah, yeah.
So my best friend was telling me about, she was finding out about QHHT, which is quantum hypnosis healing technique, which is something, it's a technique that was founded by Dolores Cannon, who was a clinical psychologist. And I also just want to clarify this because a lot of people have this wrong. As far as we know, hypnosis as a practice is at least 4,000 years old, as far as we know. We can't really know any earlier than that because there's no existing records. We only really have records from when the Egyptians started to keep records. So in the same way, you can say astrology comes from the ancient Greeks, but we don't really know. It might be something that was passed on. But anyway, so my friend got quite intrigued in these sessions, and she said that she's going to have one, and it was quite expensive. And I was like, I think that's absolute nonsense. So I've always been very intrigued by hypnosis, but I felt that it was quite an oversell. The things that so she had the session, and things literally, because we spent so much time together, things changed in her life undisputedly in front of my eyes in record time. Like you just couldn't deny it. Like there's no way you could say. There were just, I suppose there were too many good coincidences, so to speak, and we'll speak a little bit later on if you wanna about why those coincidences are taking place. But if I can tell you about your past lives, all your past lives, it's quite simple actually. I can tell you about all your past lives right now. Every single living being in any way, shape, and form, human, animal, plant, and bird, fish, seen, unseen, visible, invisible, this dimension, other dimension, that's ever been, all of those is your past lives because all of those is you. That's really the long and short of the whole thing.
I disagree. I have my own theory on it, but okay.
I'd like to hear it.
So the way I understand things is that there's 8,400,000 species of life here in this realm. So that's seen, unseen. So that's ghosts, dismembered entities, plants, bugs, little specks of living organisms, animals, you name it, 8,400,000 species. We started out from the lowest form of life, and we lived that life, died, took another birth. Lived that life, died, took another birth, until we worked our way up the rank to become a human, which the reason why the humans are at the top of the species list is because our consciousness is different. We have the capacity to hold a higher consciousness than animals, plants, so on and so forth. They can hold a certain consciousness, but not the same, because we can do what we want, basically. An animal or a plant, a tree, cannot just get up and move itself. You know, maybe in some special circumstance, you know, a tree can move little, but we can do it. We can do it. I can get up now and I can do what I want. I could get up now and fly to Germany if I had the money. I could get up now and start doing cocaine for the rest of my life. I could get up now and, you know, save someone from dying. So a plant and an animal, their consciousness is different in the sense of they are focused on other things mainly. So yeah, so I disagree in the sense of that. I'm saying that it's all me. I think that we have lived those lifetimes, and then our soul transgressed or transmigrated to another life form, and then we lived that lifetime, and then so all of those entities that I was, those were me in those lifetimes, but ultimately those aren't me, because those are just lifetimes I've lived in those bodies. What's actually me is the soul that's jumped, because the soul is carrying the consciousness of this body, and it's carrying the subtle body, which is carrying the memories and the character and the karma that you've accumulated through our lifetimes. And then, yeah, so that's the soul is me, and all the other things, they are me to an extent, but also not me, because, you know, I'm the soul, not the body, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, so okay, so first of all, truth in itself is quite a relative thing, you know, and I think the more things I sort of study and the more experience I have, maybe something I should have said, is that something that has been so synonymous with my life always has been things like you know, what do people call these things? Astral projection and out-of-body experiences. And again, I was quite surprised when I realized that other people don't have these experiences. I'm like, what do you all mean? So you go to sleep and then what? Like, no, we go to sleep and then we get up.
And then you get up, yeah.
And I'm serious. I'm not being sarcastic or funny or derogatory or anything. I was really flabbergasted. I was completely bowled over. I couldn't believe what these people were telling me. I literally thought the people were pulling my leg, you know? So in my understanding, and again, I can only tell you what I understand. So things that I got myself, things that quite a lot of people sort of said in sessions as well, is that we sort of all exist of this same one thing, so to speak. You know, we sort of one thing, so to speak, or one energy, or one essence, or one breath, or one possibility, really, that is expressing itself in multiple different sort of ways. So in my understanding, the part of us, so when you think of the soul, you know, from the way that I understand it, the soul is a much broader thing than we may actually realize. You know, it's like this got this multiple facets almost that I can understand it very clearly. It's very difficult to explain it actually, but it's like this one multifaceted thing. So if you almost think of like a disco ball, so it's one disco ball, and it's got all these little mirrors, and it hits the little shadows in all different ways, and it, you know, it's little lights that go in all different ways, and one falls on the skin and the wall and you know, this and that, but it's essentially the same thing expressing itself in different ways. So from my understanding, the soul would like to, for example, experience itself in multiple sort of human life, so to speak. But the soul would also like to experience itself in the same sense of, well, I can be a human being that can walk from here to there, and I can have like this consciousness and that consciousness, but I can also be a plant that then I wouldn't say doesn't have that consciousness, but sort of doesn't feel the need to tap into that particular consciousness with sort of like this expression and that expression. So from my understanding, and again, you know, as I say, these things are quite relative. I think that as human beings, we make things this or that and right and wrong, but in life itself, it's just life, you know? So I think that it expresses itself in these different ways. And also, it was quite intriguing to me, incredibly intriguing to me when I started to study astrology to find out how time is literally a man-made construct, like literally, you know. Obviously, there's certain cycles that are taking place, so that is all based on those cycles. But the way that somebody once explained it, and this was I really resonated with that explanation because it was quite simple when it comes to time, you know, with time not really existing, because everything, and I will really do my best to explain this, but I think this is one of the main reasons why I'm so passionate about teaching people so that you can experience these things for yourself. And it's also one of the reasons why I'm so intrigued with regression hypnosis, because through tarot, I can explain it to you as best that I can, but words are incredibly limited. Words are really, really limited. And so it's very hard to sometimes explain to someone what it is that you're picking up. But if you can help them to experience it for themselves, then it's a very, very different experience. And when you kind of guide the consciousness, and it's really not as hard as it sounds, but you can guide the consciousness sort of outside of the constructs of time. And you can be, you know, like sometimes people say, like, you know, if you are becoming aware of the thing that you are doing something, then you are not the something, you're the awareness of it. So when you can become aware of the fact that you're aware that you are aware, you can do this from a higher construct, basically. I suppose you call it your higher self or whatever, where you sort of see everything just happening at the same time, you know. And so the wonderful way that somebody explained it once, they said, if you think of everything that's happening at the moment, so when you think of time, you are able to almost like individualize an experience, and from all the experiences you take out this one moment in time. So you can, like this, obviously tarot cards, but you know, you look at them and this is the one moment in time, but when you put it back in again, it's all part of the same deck. It's you know, it's like the moment it's there, it's just part of everything. And I think maybe tarot cards are a good comparison, because you don't have to know tarot, but there's 78 cards in a tarot deck. And the thing about tarot, which makes it interesting, is that in all the 78 cards, they all have a standalone meaning of their own. They've got all sorts of, you know, number influences and symbolic influences and astrological influences or whatever. And that kind of makes them the individual card that they are, with the individual meaning and background and those sort of things. However, there is quite a lot of each card in all the other cards as well. And I think that's pretty much the same thing with life as well. You know, there's the undisputed part of everything in us, and there's this undisputed part of us in everything else.
I just going back to time, is that the way I see time is, I also used to, I mean, I was on a similar thought pattern of like, time is just a man-made thing. But I think the more I studied the philosophy when I was a monk, and the more I study it now, I see that time isn't man-made. It's always there, because everything is guided by time. That's how we have the beginning of a life and the end of a life. There's a time frame, you know, it's 80 years. So that's not something anybody of us invented. We didn't invent each other. So we didn't invent the fact that a baby grows to an old person. So time is there regardless of our input into it. I just think that time is something that we have constructed into a societal method to get people to do things. You know, you have to be here at a certain time, you have to do this at a certain time. So I think we use time to do our own bidding and our own will, but time is there regardless of whether we want it to be or not. That's how seasons change. That's how we go from babies to old age. And that's how even when you shift into like a different space or a different consciousness, like you're saying, being aware of yourself, being aware, whatever, there's still time there. It's just on a different frequency. So it's like stretched time. Here we have condensed time. We have very straightforward, almost like a lower vibrational version of time. It's very 3D, doop, 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 you know? But when you go into a higher frequency, or like a higher realm of existence, like when you encounter aliens or angels, or you astral project, time is still there, but just in a softer form. And the higher you go, the softer it gets. So it's just longer. That's at least how it's explained in the philosophy that I read, or that I've read being a monk, is that even the angels and what we would deem to be demigods, they still experience time, but our 1 year is like their 6 months. So they have 6 months, and for us it's 1 year. So their time is just stretched even further and further. So they live a lot longer. But for us, it's like, or it's the other way around. Anyway, so the point is
Doesn't really
that
matter.
we live a very short version of their long version, if that makes sense. And coming back to past lives, is that time is the guiding force that is taking everybody from the beginning of their life, or not just everybody, but every living entity, from the beginning of its life to the end of its life. And then this body that was given that time is now done, and then we get another body that gets to experience another set of time, basically. But time is still there for everybody, guiding everything. It's like the divine's energy. It's guiding us to the end of our life, basically.
Also remember that the name of the game of being on this planet is an individualized experience. So you can only really have an individualized experience in a space that actually caters for that, So when you kind of want to get out of that everything here and now type of space, then you have to kind of find a way to get out of that everything here and now kind of space. And it's going to be very sort of freaky to people if, suddenly, I don't know, we 4 people in a room and there's no Devon, and all of a sudden there's a Devon. Like it's, there's a game that happens.
That's often what I tell people is like, so if I am this body, right? If you are that body and you will always be that body, and I am this body and I'll always be this body, why does something change at the moment we call death? Why don't I just treat your body the same as I treated you throughout your whole life? I'll just come up to you, slap your hand, bump your fist, give you a hug, because what is changing at that time of death? Why do we consider someone alive, and why do we consider someone dead? What is the difference between the alive person and the dead person? Because before the person died yesterday, they were alive. So what happened between yesterday and today? What changed? And the answer to that is that the consciousness of the person has shifted out of the being, and the thing that emanates consciousness is the soul. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul. So the soul has left, and the consciousness that brings the person to life has left the body. Otherwise, I would just treat you the same, and we would carry on living for thousands and millions of years as you and I, as we are right now.
But sorry, hold on a second. If I can ask you something, just think about that.
Yeah.
Just imagine, like really just place yourself in a thought pattern where you imagine you have been on this planet for 4,000 years now already.
More like 4 million. Imagine 4 million years.
Just imagine how bored you would be, because there would be no progression. There would, so a lot of the things I think in this life that we make bad are actually more the blessed sort of things, because even when you really think about it, I think we've really been told that certain things are really good and really bad. So we've been told that when you're born, it's a blessing, and when you die, it's a horrible thing. But what really happens is that, through many different ways, men have lost their connection to the truth of who they are. And we don't understand that we are part of nature. Yeah. So yes, we might be the part of nature that has more consciousness. You can move from here to there and that sort of thing. But you are not separate from this whole evolution. You're not separate from life, And I think I always find it very interesting that so many people will say that us human beings are the most evolved beings in the universe. And then those same people reason that we are the only human-like beings in the universe. I'm like, well, which is it? You know, it can't be both. By your reasoning, it can't be both. You know, I don't say to them. But when you look at nature, you know, and when we kind of come from the idea that we're part of so much bigger than just being born and dying, you're part of a bigger cycle. So, for example, if you look at the planets that, like the seasons on planet Earth, the reason why those seasons are taking place is because some time ago, I think it was a meteorite or something that knocked into planet Earth and sort of like put the axis a little bit sideways. If that didn't happen, then planet Earth would still interact with everything around it, but it wouldn't interact in such a way that we would have things like seasons, for example. And I think we have this, even when you look at nature, we have this idea that nature is separate from us. But when you really look at nature, everything that, so to speak, dies goes back into the ecosystem of life, and then somehow it integrates into that in a different way. So, you know, we look at I don't know, like a tree falling over or something like that, and it's a tragedy to us. But then that breaks down in different ways. You get the mushrooms coming about, and it does all sorts of different things, and it gets put back into the earth. And I think that we as human beings, we, through generations, we've really bought into this idea that somehow we're completely separate from nature. We're separate from life, that this planet was created for us, but we're not of it.
Yeah. We're creating, I like to think of it as like we've separated ourselves, and now we're creating a divide between us and nature. When really the correct way to live, even in a spiritual sense, it's not to negate because you have two energies in this world, right? You have the spiritual energy and the material energy. So the soul in every living entity is the spiritual energy that brings the material energy to life. So just like a car without a driver, it's not going to go anywhere. So a body without a soul, it's going to be a dead body, right? So the material energy, nature, all of these things, it's a covering for the soul that lives in everything. So when you say nature is alive and it's breathing, what we're really referring to is that it has consciousness, it has soul to it. We take the soul out of it, just like you take the soul out of a body, nature becomes dead matter. There's a nice example that if you take a mud, and you make a clay pot. The clay pot, no matter what shape or size you make, all of them, is basically just a mud at the end of the day. So the thing we call us, our body, the things around us, is just the mud shaped in different forms, and it has different biochemical structures to allow it to act and function in different ways. So what's giving all of that life is the soul that's breathed into everything. And the point I wanted to bring it back to was, what were you saying before I started?
I've said a lot.
Yeah, just before though, there was a point I was saying that to bring it to.
I know I was talking about nature, and I was talking about our separation.
Oh, yeah. So if you're looking at nature and us, there's no separation between us because we're all the same energy. At least the bodies we inhabit are all the same energy. And somehow we've disconnected ourselves through our own false egos, thinking, we're different from nature, and this is what's creating a lot of the chaos in the world, is our unharmonious detachment from the very thing that we're supposed to govern. So we as humans, we're not the most advanced in the universe. We're just the most advanced here on Earth in terms of our consciousness. In terms of, we don't act like it, but we once were. Yeah, in this time, we're definitely not, but we have the capacity to be that, because we're supposed to, even in all religious texts, we're supposed to govern and look after things, because that's the role we were given. In today's age, that's completely out the window. No one's looking out for anything other than themselves, basically, But so that's the divine harmony between us and nature, is understanding that we're not different from anything else. Just because I'm a human and that's an animal doesn't make me any better or me any, worse than the animal. Just my consciousness is just a bit different from that animal because I'm supposed to do something different. And animals' basic functions in life are eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. That's basically what animals do, because that's an instinctual drive. We can do that as well, but we have the capacity for a higher functioning where we can start to question things and start to develop our consciousness to become more spiritually aware so that we can govern everything else and basically help the harmony of nature. So nature was designed to do specific things. It's designed to function, it's designed to grow, it's designed to age, and it's designed to die, just like us as humans. We are the same as nature in that sense. That's the designation of the body. It's born, it grows, it functions for some time, and then it dies, basically, on a very, very basic sense, you know? And then, yeah, so because we are spiritual entities, we and the human can have the capacity to understand that and question that, then we can help everything else to have a spiritual inclination whereby we can engage it in the service of the divine. We can use it in service and we can give it a spiritual connotation, whereas something else that has a lower conscious cannot do that. But so coming back to the point of past lives is that at least the way that the Vedic teachings go is that we were in each of those life. We were a plant, we were an animal, we were this, we were that. And eventually we got to the point where we could sort of upgraded ourselves to a human life so we could make further spiritual evolution. But the thing that catches most of us is that we don't click into that because the way that society is structured, because people like even in religions in today's day and age, they shut down people's awareness of these things. Like you were taught, you know, you're a demon if you can see entities or talk with them or, you know, whatever the case may be. I know that I was also, because I'm also gifted to some degree with these types of things, is that I also shut these things down very, very quickly because I was just unaware that I had anything of use, you know? Because no one came to me and said, hey, son, you can see ghosts or energies. Let's work with that, you know? No one said that to me. Not once. I had to discover that for myself, as I'm sure you had to discover that for yourself. And then we linked to more people who were doing these things. But the point is that yeah, I think the point is that we've gone through all of those lifetimes to get to this so that we can evolve spiritually. And people have forgotten about that because of just the way that the world is run at the moment. You know, it's this big divide between us and nature. It's a big divide between us and who we really are. Everybody's just geared up towards money, money, money. You know, status. I'm just going to survive. I'm going to protect what I have against you because you're different from me. And, you know, this is our land and not all of our lands, you know. And I think through the understanding of past lives and all that stuff, we can actually come to be more compassionate for each other, understanding that, you know, we're all actually a soul in the body and not actually the body. I think it will cure two things it will cure our fear of death and it will also cure our fear of each other at the end of the day. Because
I must be quite honest, I've never, in all honesty, I've always been very confused by the idea that people are afraid of dying. Because I mean, first of all, you're going to die in any case. You know, and I remember when I was young, I would ask my mother, like, I don't understand why people are afraid of dying. Like, I just literally never got it because I always understood that you're never really gone. So it was very strange to me. So the thing to remember with past lives is that, first of all, past lives do not really exist. Everything is just here and now. So, but when you think of it like, think of it like this, it's like with the cards. You can zero in on a certain experience. You know, it's just like the time or sort of like analogy that people like to use of sort of like the video game or whatever the more modern version of it is, or like Netflix, basically. Everything's already on Netflix. It just depends on what you are watching. And at the moment, that is what's playing for you, but none of the other things stop playing. They're always still there. And so I think with the evolution of our consciousness, it is all part of the game, really, that you have you have this game of like evolution. Okay, I'm starting over there. I'm going from a monkey or from a chimpanzee or whatever we supposedly came from. Then you go to this and this and this and this and that. And I must actually honestly tell you, the idea that's starting to go around these days more and more and more, which is an idea that I always had. I just always been very afraid to actually verbalize it because I thought people will say I've really lost the plot.
Tell me, I'm interested. I'm sure we all are, the people that are listening that have made it this far.
I have always had this, as a coach, you can call it a hypothesis, that I don't really think that human beings are from planet Earth to start with. Because when you really think about it, when you really think about it, human beings are the only creatures on this whole planet, the supposedly highest evolved and the supposedly best adapted beings from this planet, which when you also think of it is slightly in a different league to all the other things, with the consciousness and stuff. We are the absolute worst at adapting to this planet. I mean, you can't leave a baby alone for probably even up until like 2 years. That baby's probably going to die. You have to look after them. You have to be there with them well into years. I mean, people are in their 60s and they are still like, I don't feel like I belong here. Nothing feels right. So I think there's something inside of us which says that you might not fully be from here. I mean, even you take something like COVID, which probably was a generated disease, the animals were fine. Nature rebalanced itself only a couple of months since we've been out of it. I mean, as little as 3 months. So whilst I'm not saying that human beings are the virus, what I would say, though, is that as a supposedly intelligent race and as a supposedly highly evolved race,
we're not
really displaying a lot of
and it's interesting. So we were and we have the capacity to be, but our consciousness has been degraded so much through the evolution of time at the moment that we've hit this point where we're hitting, at least again according to ancient scriptures, where we're hitting this low level consciousness where we are becoming degraded, and therefore everything else is becoming degraded, because we were supposed to uphold spiritual principles. We were supposed to be the ones guiding everything else and looking after, and we were given dominion over everything in that sense, not in a negative sense, in a very positive sense, because we have the capacity to hold such a high consciousness. And now, because our consciousness is degraded, everything else is becoming degraded. It's a natural symptom, because now we are not doing what we were designed to do here on this earth. We are now doing the opposite of that. Now we're squandering and being greedy for everything. And we're taking from nature, we're taking from each other, we're taking from, the universe, the earth, everything. And we're just like, it's all for me. I want the power, not you. I'm not going to share it in a harmonious in fashion like nature does. Nature is sharing everything. The trees are not living for themselves. The river doesn't live for itself. The sun doesn't live for itself. But for some reason, we think we're different and we live for ourselves, even the animals, they're not living for themselves. The plants aren't living for themselves. Everything is designed to function harmoniously with everything else. And we've lost the plot through our degradation of our consciousness. And that has also stopped us from seeing that we are something beyond these bodies again. And that has degraded our consciousness from the idea that I am just here in this body for this short lifetime. And then in my next lifetime, I'm going to get another body where I can choose to do the same things, or I can choose to do something different. Like what you were saying, is that I can choose to live the same cycle of fears of this and fears of that, and just working to survive and then making money and then dying. Or I can choose to really learn about what's going on with not only myself, but also the world around me. And then I can evolve my consciousness even higher. And then, you take it from there, and then you can help other people to do the same thing, basically.
Because we have greed, and greed really comes from fear, and fear comes from
lust,
sense of,
I think,
not good enough. It's like, and that's what we've been taught. And I personally believe that majority of our problems come from the simple fact that we are not recharging our natural batteries often enough.
We're
That's
not in
really
we're not in contact with the abundance of
we,
our spiritual
yes,
nature. Yeah, we're
yes,
clinging
that, but
to
also,
the finite, not the infinite. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
but also we're doing all these things that are completely unnatural to a human body, so to speak. You sit down all the time, you've got all these electrical sort of like waves around
I am
you.
100%
Never
guilty
touch the
of that.
earth anymore.
You're like, just
We
I'm
live in
around
apartments like
technology too
these.
much.
It's just not normal, you know.
Yeah.
It's, and I mean, simple. Like if you look at people that live a very, you look at someone that maybe lives a very, let's call it a very high life. You know, they live in some penthouse, 30 stories up in the air, and you know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But then that person, like at, you know, whatever, 65, dies of cancer, or they get Alzheimer's or whatever. And then you get some 98-year-old woman who's walking barefoot around the, you know, the house, still goes and fetch wood from the forest, needs her own dough, don't even know how old she is, couldn't care. And somehow that person's doing fine. And, you know, it's always so boggling to me, because in the medical field will say, we don't understand. I'm like, what do you mean you don't understand? Are you saying that you don't want to understand? Because
Yes, basically. Scientists, in my opinion, and from what I've studied, don't want to admit that there's another side to life. They look at the molecules and the chemicals. And this, by the way, I forgot to mention, I'm writing a book. And this is in the book that I'm writing, that scientists think that this fully conscious alive being has stemmed from inert matter. So it thinks, the scientists say that inert matter evolved and created more advanced matter, and then eventually created a living being. But then the question is, again, when we die, why not just take all the inert matter, shove it back into the body, and then it comes alive again? Because we are not the inert matter. We are something different. There's two energies at play here. There's a material one and a spiritual energy. And yeah, that's basically the sum and substance of a lot of spiritual teachings, is to come back to the point of understanding I am not this body. And then this links into past lives, if you have ever had an experience. So there's so many ways that you can tell us more about this, but just from my experience, that I've clicked into the idea of past lives, like through dreams, where so I have this group of friends, and they're like all in one family, so they're brothers and sisters. I had a dream about them where they were all Persians, but they were them. I knew it was them. I knew the brothers and I knew the sister. I could tell them from a mile away that these were my friends, you know, and they were the same people, but they looked different, there were slight similarities, but it was so like, and they were all Persian at that point in time. So I've had experiences like that where I'm just like, to me, it's undeniable proof that I've connected with these people in a different form before.
Okay, let me ask you some questions on that. So let's go with the person. So you see these friends of yours. So where are you in the space of all of this?
I'm greeting them. We're in like this little town or city, which I have consciously now in this lifetime, I've never seen it in my life before. But yeah.
So when you're with these, you know, these friends of yours, you all these, I assume you were Persian as well, probably?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't see myself, but I could see like
all you Persians.
Yeah,
you know?
We're all Persian
So
together.
that is what. So just very quickly, side note, that is what makes regression hypnosis interesting, because you know, you also want to understand what is the role that you play, because you assume yourself to be another person, but maybe you were pot plant just watching this stuff. So you know, if you can find a way to maybe see in a mirror or whatever, you can see what you are. But anyways, so when you have that experience of being with your Persian friends in the dream, are you with them now, or are you with them then?
I was with him then. Yeah.
You was with them then?
Yeah, okay. It was a city, but it was sort of like the city was like an olden Persian city. Like if you could just imagine back to ancient Egypt, those types of buildings, and so very similar cloth roofs and stuff like that. And so that's what I remember from the dream.
When you're in the dream.
Yeah.
Are you in the dream? You actively in the dream?
I was actively in the dream. I was greeting them and I was looking at them and I was like, you are my friend, but you look different.
So the dream is in the now state, right?
Yeah. It was maybe when 2016, I think I had the dream.
So here's the question though.
Yeah.
if you're having, let's stay with it. Let's say you're having a dream. So if you're having a dream of being a Persian, according to our calendar long ago, but you're having a dream, being in the dream now, actively in the dream, could it really be in the past if you are there actively now?
So I think it could be like a memory. Yeah, just like you can remember something from 10 years ago, you can have a memory via a certain energy connection. So here's something interesting that can verify just my experience with this, and I hope my friend doesn't mind me sharing this, but he had a dream of himself. So I understand a lot about my past lives because I deeply went into it. So I was in another past life where I was thrown in jail. I won't go into details, but I was locked in a jail on the side of a mountain. But because people don't need to know everything, you know. So I'll share it. Huh?
No, it's okay.
I'll share with intimate people. Yeah. So I was locked in a jail on the side of a mountain and I was left there to die. My friend, before we even met each other, he had a dream where he was looking into a prison cell on the side of a mountain, looking at a man strung up against a wall. And that's the exact same thing that I was told, is I was locked up against a wall in a prison cell on the side of a mountain. My friend, after we meet, we just get into this conversation after the dream I had about them. And he goes on to further tell me, you know, once I had this really, really vivid dream or whatever he had. And he said he's never told anybody because he didn't feel comfortable enough to tell anybody. But he felt comfortable enough to tell me, the person who understood that I had a past life that was so heavily linked to this dream that it's like, how can this not be coincident? I mean, how could this be a coincidence? So he tells me he was a prison guard looking into this prison cell, staring at a man in a prison cell on the side of a mountain. Mine just.
But when you think about it, so do you see the magic of time when you really think about it? Because in the dream, you are in the dream now.
Yeah.
At this moment. And then when you wake up, you were in the dream and it was then. So something can simultaneously be now and then. And then when you speak to your friend, you bring something different into the equation, which then leaves a person to wonder, was it even a dream to start with? Maybe it's just something that you remembered.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and that's, I mean, that's one of the ways that I've experienced past lives is through my dreams. You know, I've taken my dreams with a pinch of salt because sometimes it is just a random amalgamation of random stuff. But there's some things like this experience which there's no explanation for me. Like, I mean, when I had the dream, I told them about it. I told them, hey, I saw you and you look different. And to me, it was like a Persian vibe, Persian city, stuff like that. And then my friend, like sometime later, reveals this experience to me where I was like, if we were not in past lives together, this would just be like such a crazy story to tell people, right? You know, that you had a dream about something and I am aware of something that happened to me in my past. And here they are just heavily linked. And I had a dream about all of you in a different life, different bodies, but you were still you. So to me, it's just like, if past lives are not true, then I don't know what to call this whole like.
Are you ready for another one?
Am I ready for another one? I don't know. Yes, I am ready for another one.
I was saying to my friend that I want to make these videos, and there's so many things I want to talk about, but I don't really know where to start because, and I mean this with, I mean this with complete humility. I'm not like being egotistical or whatever about it, but I'm very hard pressed to know what to talk to people about sometimes because, a lot of people that make this sort of material, they've had this breakthrough experience and they go, oh my God, I got this, and oh my God, I got that. And I never had any of those experiences, to me, it just was. So I was saying to my friend, it'll be so cool if I can have somebody that can maybe ask me some questions, then I can just answer their questions. And then she actually says to me, didn't you mention that Devin wanted to do something at some point? I said, yes, he did, but we never really spoke about it again. I don't know if he still wants to do it. And, if he comes to me, I'll do it. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. And then about 2 hours later, you say to me, I know. I think we should do a podcast about past lives. I said, okay. That's why I just said, okay.
Do you know what would be cool? I always say this to people that I'm close with. I would be very interested to see where we've come in past lives, you know, like who were we to each other in different lifetimes? Because in my opinion, I don't think we just randomly connect and have deep connections with just anybody. You know, I think there is a level of like karma that we've interacted with and created between each other. And there's some sort of divine purpose behind it, you know, to have an evolution of conversations, of connections, of evolution of each other in our interactions. You know, we're designed to help each other in certain ways. I mean, to varying degrees with everybody, but there's certain people that stick out to you and to me in our lives, right? And yeah, so I'm often curious as to what happens, like where were we if past lives were a thing, just for the sake of it being a real thing. I wonder where we were in all these different lives. Like, how did we cross paths? What lifetimes were we in? What happened in those lifetimes, you know? And like, why are we together again in this moment, you know?
I think I find it very interesting, and a lot of people have been saying, you know, so everybody doesn't have the same experience in hypnosis, and some people go to past life, some people don't. Some people go to future trajectories. So,
Sure.
you know, other people go to linear places and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of people that had that experience, sort of like where they decided to incarnate. So they're basically about to jump into the body, if you want to kind of think of it like that. And it's always quite interesting because some souls will wait until the very last moment, sort of like before birth, before they jump into the body. Because remember, the body has life as consciousness already. So the human fetus doesn't need the soul in order to develop inside of the body, because it's life, it's intelligence. So some go in right from the very beginning, some go in later. And so I always ask them, like a lot of them, so why did you decide to take this life? And probably about 40%, if I have to estimate, of people that, to my great surprise, said the same thing. There was nothing else to do. And a lot will be like, when they reflect back on their life on this planet, they like, well, I sort of wasted that. You know, there's so many things that I could have done. And so a lot of times they place themselves in these situations that seem almost like compromising and almost like unfair, because you are born with a disease or disability, or, you know, you're born into poverty, or you've got one long leg and one short leg or something like that. And or there's a lot of horrific things that happens in your life. And it may seem so unfair that an innocent baby is born into that. But I think the thing to remember is that an innocent baby, so to speak, it's typically a very mature soul that is just deciding to have a certain experience.
And we're made to forget. Like
yes,
just
but
through
a
the
lot
course
of
of
people,
nature, it just like shuts
yes,
off the memory. Well, yeah, and
yes,
through like some instances, you may have some remembrance. Like, sorry to cut you off, but
yes,
just to add
no,
in that there's been a lot of studies done where kids randomly in some random village far away has such clear memory of their past life, where they can tell their parents to the T that I lived in England on this street, this house number, and I know the people that are living there because they were my family. And they will name them by name and say, the granny that's living there, his name is Mary. My wife who lives there, his name is Jennifer, and I have a son. And these people were sort of like flabbergasted because their child was saying, where's my wife? Where's my son?
yeah.
And it was like, but you're a 3-year-old, 4-year-old kid, and you're talking to me about some English house. And so they went and they did the research, and they found the house in England with that street number or street name and the number, and they contacted the people, and lo and behold, those people that the child was talking about lived there. And this is some far removed little village.
There's a photograph on page 8 with the orange type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so this kid from like rural India is telling her parents or his parents about some really fancy little town in England, like miles away, no contact with that side of the world, no nothing. And it's interesting. It's an interesting thing that's happened on multiple occasions, in multiple places all over the world. And yeah, it's crazy that if past lives didn't exist, like, I don't know what to call that phenomenon. And I just want to say that if you're listening and you've come this far, if you've had an experience with your kid doing that, or you did these types of things when you were younger, please drop it in the comment section below. Tell us, tell us what happened. Like, has your kid done something weird like that? Or like, like Adrian used to see dead people. Does your kid see dead people? Or did you see dead people and just know that you're not alone? Adrian and myself see them too. Yeah. Anyway.
I just I think that planet Earth is a very addictive place, actually, because you can do all these things. And just really think about it. Just try to wrap your mind around it. You get to have individualized experiences. You take this substance and you feel that way, So you're like, oh my goodness. Your mind sort of like begins to open in different ways. And I think that planet Earth can become quite addictive, actually. And you can sometimes fall very deeply into it. And that is why you sometimes need someone that has to sort of like shake you awake a little bit. And I think a lot of times with those examples that I gave early on, those things that seem so unfair, a lot of times we come here for a very specific reason. And ultimately, it might just be that you came here to remember that this isn't real, And so you need something to keep you consciously aware. And with most people, when you speak about a spiritual awakening, it will usually be because they went through some form of trauma, either near-death experience at birth, actually. So a lot of people have that. And with all of that being said, I don't want anybody to come from the understanding that I haven't had trauma in my personal life. I did as well. And I believe that all of that was here to somehow keep me conscious in the simulation itself, and to sort of make me curious, to ask questions, to want to know more, to want to understand more, because knowledge is not really hidden from anyone. We just don't always know how to perceive. And I think something that I would say is that if you ever do go for a regression hypnosis session, it is usually best to not have any expectations for where the session is going to go. Because you may be, say, fascinated by past lives and you say, I want to have a past life experience. But maybe that is not in your best interest, or for whatever reason. I mean, in an infinite universe, there might be infinite reasons. For whatever reason, that is just not accessible to you right now. Then it won't happen. It doesn't mean that it can't. It doesn't mean that it's not true. It doesn't mean that you didn't have past lives. In the same way, if you've become horribly intoxicated, you've gone to the bar and you hit back a couple of tequilas, 20 tequilas down the line, you don't even know your own name. You're not even able to operate in your own body, but your name is still your name, your body is still your body, you're still here. So Earth, in many ways, in my understanding, can be like that. It can become so sort of delicious that you get so enticed in it that you, in a sense, forget who you are. And then you kind of need to be reminded again, because remember, we still have free will. So your consciousness is where your consciousness is. And the way that I understand it is that, we make quite a big deal of being alive and being dead, even though I would say that for me, personally, if I lose someone to death, I'm still sad, because there is a fundamental difference between the physical experience and the spiritual experience. I can make you a plate of food, you can sit there in energy, but you're not going to be able to consume it, that sort of thing. Of course, I lost the point now.
I'll say something on that quickly, is that understanding things from a spiritual perspective is not to make you cold-hearted towards the more material aspects of life. The spiritual things actually just help us to understand why things are happening, so that even though when someone dear to me dies, just because I'm spiritual, I was a monk, or someone's been a monk their whole life, it doesn't mean that I won't feel sad. I won't miss the person, because that person, like my mother, she raised me, she had a significant role in my life. My friends that have shaped me and helped me and supported me. And all those people have played such a big role in my life that if any of them had to die, or if I had to die, we will miss each other, because it's like no one can fill that gap, because everyone is an individual. So understanding this from a philosophical point of view isn't to make me cold-hearted towards life. And it's not supposed to make you not sad when these types of things happen. It's very natural and very human to be sad, and to experience anger, and to experience pain, and to experience loss and lack. And that's all the part of human life. And oftentimes, like what Adrian was saying, is that I don't call it the awakening. It's like, I call it like an interference. A spiritual interference comes in, where something shakes you and makes you think about things a bit differently, because it's like, if you continue to think like this, you're going to suffer a lot more. Because then everybody you come into contact with, you're just going to get increasingly sadder and sadder and sadder. And then, like, what's the point of life? I'm just dying. Everybody's just dying. Where you have a spiritual understanding, is like, everybody is dying, but that's the natural progression of life. Time is taking us from point A to point B. Our body is growing, functioning, dying, because that's nature. Trees grow, function, die. Animals grow, function, die. But there's something that is deeper than that. And that's who we really are. And
I think,
yeah.
Sorry. I think if you want to look at why past life regression is such a really powerful modality, because do you allow profanities on your podcast?
Yeah, go for it. I'm not
Holy fuck. some of the things that I've seen and heard and witnessed, like, people cannot make these things up. And what you would often get is, I believe spirit wants to also show to you a lot of times that these things are very valid and real. Like, I mean, often I would get the experience that, say, maybe I've got 3 or 4 sessions in the same week, be it online, be it in person, then I would maybe have 3 or 4 people coming to me that don't know each other at all. One is from India, one is from Cape Town, one is from Johannesburg, one is from Britain. These people don't know each other, supposedly, from a grain of salt. And then these 4 people will tell you exactly the same story. You would swear they're running some sort of scam in the background. Like, literally, they tell you the same thing. I've looked at some recordings and they just blow my mind away. They tell you the same thing. They give you the same description. They tell you about, to just make up some, or something like that. For example, one time with the blue people, same leader, same name, same command, same challenges, same messages. These people don't know each other at all, like, not at all. And it's just really mind-boggling. And I think there's 2 things that goes along with why past life regression is such a powerful thing. Because first of all, time itself doesn't really exist. It's a construct that we use to operate by and to measure things and to individualize things by. But I think it's all just one thing. So when you change something or heal something in your past life, it really benefits everything, because it's still the same pattern. It's the same glass of water with the food coloring inside.
Here's one of the things, like, just being a Reiki practitioner and working with people who are suffering from, like, certain ailments or, like, certain belief patterns in this lifetime. A lot of the time, so this is where past lives actually play a big role, is that sometimes it comes from a past life. So here's an example of what I mean, is that, say, for instance, you were a princess and you were sold to, like, some kingdom somewhere against your will. You just had to do it because that's the way of the world back then. But this person you were sold to was such a bad king or a bad prince or a bad leader, but you had to do your duty. Otherwise, if you went home, they'd kill you. Or if you stepped out against him, he will kill you. So you told yourself, I have to act a certain way. I have to be a certain way to survive. And you ingrained that so deeply in your psyche, in your subconscious, that now you carry those beliefs into the next life, where now you're limiting yourself through your beliefs because you had to, it's not your fault, but you had to survive. but now you carry those same beliefs. So you attract those same types of people into your life because you're vibrating on that frequency. And now that belief system that you survived with in that lifetime, it's no longer serving you in this lifetime. So there's a way where I've had to work, I mean, not had to, but I have had the opportunity to work with many people where I've helped people to cut those types of connections and those beliefs because they no longer are valid anymore.
Yes.
You know? So that's a way in where past lives do play a role, is that sometimes we're still carrying the chemical makeup of that life in this life. And like for me, I've had some past lives where I believed a certain thing, and just understanding that, I can clearly see why I've made choices that I made in this lifetime. You know, before I knew about the past lives, I had already been making these choices, and now I see through understanding them, like now it makes so much sense. Now I understand why I've made those choices subconsciously, is because I believe myself to be a certain way, and I believe life to be a certain way through my multiple experiences of life. And yeah, so it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah.
No, that really is. It actually takes me into the point number 2, is that the thing to remember is that we are not human beings with consciousness. We are consciousness having different experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And
we're a driver that has a car, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you always think of it as a driver, that's a chauffeur. You're still a driver, and you can drive different cars. So whether you drive a Lamborghini or you drive a Mini Cooper, you're still driving a car, essentially, you know? And I think with the soul, it's very much like, because consciousness just carries on. And consciousness want to have experiences. Consciousness wouldn't really want to have the same experience over and over and over, because that sort of defies the point of playing the game. And it's important to remember that we are in the game, and the name of the game is evolution and experience. And so we even, I believe, adopt different beliefs. So let's say if I go into this life and I'm a monk. That should be interesting. Okay, that monk thing was really cool. You know, whether you did it like you did it more like in a
modern setting,
in a modern sort of way, in a modern city, or you go sit on the mountain, or maybe in different lives you say, well, I did one in Cape Town. Let's just see if I do it on the mountain. Yes, okay, that was really, really cool. Now let's go try something different. Let's go see what it's like being a Muslim. You know, and I think in that way, beliefs also give us the opportunity to have different experiences, with neither one being right or wrong, because it's called a belief for a reason. We don't really know if it's true. We made these things up, essentially, you know. But anyway, so when you look at it living from different lives, remember that you've got your pathology that is always going through. So we live this life, certain things happen to us, and these things are happening to us, and our consciousness is really what it's happening to. So conscious, in a sense, is very much like today, it's a warm day, you're wearing a shirt. Tomorrow, it's a cold day, you wear a jumper. It's the same body. It's a different shirt. It's still the same body, you know? So things happen in certain lifetimes, and you jump into a new lifetime. And sometimes we forget that we're supposed to forget who we are. So we remember, and then we have those experiences of, you know, being in India, being in Britain and stuff like that. Or maybe you want to have the experience of remembering it in this life to see, well, what would that be like? But long story short is that the thing to remember is that as human beings, we are copies of copies of copies of copies of copies. We are, technically speaking, the same thing over and over, duplicating upon itself. So even if you think about that, so your parents get a child, which is you. Obviously, that's why they're your parents. But anyway, your parents get a child, which is you, and you are a copy of them, and then they die. But when you really think about it, since you are an expansion of them, are they actually really dead? You know what I mean? How could they possibly be?
I see what you mean.
It continues.
Yeah, it's the clay.
You want to be more
open-minded.
Yeah, I think when you look into these things, people often look for definitives. And I think when you look for definitives, you try to categorize things. And that by, you know me, I'm not very big on labels. Because the moment you name something, you confine it. And I think that when you are intrigued by these sort of things, instead of trying to find the answer, I think what you really want to do is you want to find the unfolding possibilities. And I think you never really want to get to a point where you say to yourself, so that is the answer. That is definitely how it is. Because again, we live in a universe of multiple possibilities. What is right and wrong and true or false is what we decide.
Even in the scripture, like that I read, I mean, we believe that it's given by the divine directly, but even in the scripture, it says that it's very difficult to understand the divine. So the divine has given us basics, like to help us in our evolution, but the divine goes beyond that even, you know.
But here's the question: how can anything, when you really think about it, if everything is just the divine expressing itself, how can anything really not be from the divine?
Yeah. So the analogy with the clay pots again is that the clay that the pots are made out of, which is us, we're the pots, and the world is the pot, and the universe is the pot. That is all temporary, and it's all shaped into this beautiful pot, but then it's destroyed and it all becomes clay again. So the clay is the energy of the divine, but everything that makes the clay is still the clay. It's still the energy of the divine, but the shapes and forms are all temporary. So this whole universe, so in the Vedic text again, it said that this universe is just one bubble. And if you could think of all the pores in your body and all the pores letting go one bubble, that's how many universes there are. So every universe is a little bubble, and every bubble is like a different clay pot with little aspects of different clay pots and different designs on it and in it. And so it's all different, but once the time comes where it all needs to get destroyed, it gets destroyed, and then it gets remodeled into something else. So the energy that makes everything, the material energy, that is a part of the divine. And then the spiritual energy that gives everything life, the soul, which has its consciousness, that's the energy of the divine. But everything that's made from the material energy, that's all temporary. That's not you can't say, I wouldn't say it's illusion, but it's not eternal. It's just made now for a certain period of time, and then it's destroyed at some point, and then it's made again, and then destroyed, and then made again and destroyed. And then we're just bouncing around.
I think in many ways life, not in a negative sense, but I think in many ways life is almost like, you know how we have innocent fun sometimes. You take a couple of young babies, you give them lemon for the first time, and then you film it. It's funny. Not like anything bad is happening to the baby. You know, even though it has to be said that a lot of the traumatic experiences we sometimes have in life can come from things like that. So when I remember when I actually first came across it and somebody told me about that, I actually said, I don't really think that's the best idea, because, you know, a baby sees you as they don't even question. So if anything goes wrong, they believe that it's something wrong with them. So they trust you, and you give them something that's, you know, that's obviously not pleasant, and that really impairs on their relationship with trust. So I'm actually going to say to you, I do not at all, even though it's to each their own, I personally do not recommend the lemon challenge with babies or any of the other things that are supposedly funny, because remember the brain takes everything very literally.
So what's important to us is not the same importance to a baby. Like if a baby loses their doll, it means something different, way different to us. Like we can understand the doll is just a doll, we can get another one, but to the baby there's a connection there. There's like, this is my thing, this is my friend, this is my. So when the doll goes, it's like a traumatic experience, and if we just brush it off, oh my God, just get another doll. It's like, anyway, I understand what you're saying in that.
And to the mind, everything is now. And there is one of the things that really, really makes, you know, whether you call it past lives, you get timeline regression, which is basically from where you are now till the time that you were conceived, womb healing, whatever it is that you want to. The consciousness always goes. It never really stops. Everything is here to the mind now. So whether you are a 50-year-old person whose, you know, car gets stolen, or you're a 5-month-old person whose, you know, favorite toy gets taken away, everything happens to here and now. And until you explain to the mind that you no longer need to be attached to that experience. You can be 60 years old and you still experiencing physically right now the experience of losing something of substance to you. And that is why beliefs can carry across what we would call different lifetimes. So something happened like how many ever lifetimes ago, but to the mind, it's still now.
It's still now.
And the thing with, and the thing with regression hypnosis is you're not trying to change anything. You are changing the emotional connection that you have to it. So the doll is gone. It's a horrific thing. They explain to the mind, okay, I get what you're saying, but if we can maybe change that around, because of that belief that you have, you are having difficulty as an adult, trusting other people. And it may seem like, how can something that happens at 5 months old have anything to do with when you are 50? And and so that is where the timeless meets the timed, I suppose. On our conscious experience, everything flows in a linear way. In the subconscious mind, which is the broader part of who we are, the broader consciousness of who we are, everything is now. Now, 10 minutes ago, 300 years ago, it's all the same thing. And if I can maybe just add as well, what past lives, which makes it quite powerful, because a lot of times people have this idea that when you look for healing, when you look for answers, when you look for balance, all those sort of things, it has to be all of the lives that you have lived. And when you come from that sort of reasoning, it's sort of, you place it in the category that your life is just this, that consciousness is just you, jumping from body to body to body. But, it is about what has affected the inherited pathology of who you are. So it could be 500 years ago that maybe your mother witnessed a witch burned at the stake. And so you can, and so it's very important that even if you do go into past lives and stuff like that, that you're very open to exploring and asking questions, and you don't assume anything at face value, because you can say, well, I have the experience of, oh my goodness, it's terrible. There's a woman that's burning in the middle of the field or whatever. And one may assume that is your life, but it might not be.
It might just be a memory, of you seeing something else. Might be a memory
of the consciousness. So, when we speak about my consciousness, it doesn't mean that it has to be you who actually lived that life. It is the conscious lineage that leads up to you, which then in a sense means you kind of did live that life. You know what I mean?
You lived a life maybe that was a part of that experience. You lived a life that was a part of that experience. Like, I saw someone, I may not be that person, but I saw them in that lifetime because I was there. So you were a part of that dynamic that was happening at that point in time.
And you could even say that there's a fire and I'm really, really hot and I'm scared for my life. And that may mean that you were plant. Doesn't mean that you're a human being. So it's always very interesting when you ask these questions. So if anyone ever had that experience that or may have wondered about it, where people always ask you, look at your feet. Do you have feet? What are you wearing? It is really to establish if you actually do have feet. It's a starting point to, are you even human to start with?
Yeah, this is interesting. So just to round off a little bit, let's just, I think, touch base on where people can find you. So I will also drop all the links down in the description below, but just maybe you can talk about your social media platforms that you're busy on at the moment.
So I am predominantly on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can really find me if you type in Psychic Adrian. So that will be on Facebook, on Instagram. On Facebook, and in Facebook, I like to go live, and I maybe draw cards and things like that.
These are, I can testify, these have helped me many times. Adrian will just lovingly see your comment in the comment section, draw out a card for you, tell you something, and it's always helped me. So if you ever want to tune into his Facebook Lives, when do you do them?
I'm thinking of doing them again in the mornings in South Africa, GMT +2 time, probably 7:30. I'm looking at Mondays, even though today's Monday and I didn't do it. But I'm looking at Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at this point, or possibly Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
I'm very blessed that my schedule is a lot fuller these days than it was before. And I like to, as you know, as Devin can attest, I do lives. I like to do motivational videos on Instagram. I like to do monthly draws on YouTube and all sorts of things. And I'm not doing it because I want to market myself. I'm doing it because I want to help people. I want to deliver a service to help the world. And as it turns out, it turned out to be very good marketing, which actually wasn't. It wasn't really. It was the furthest thing.
That's the thing. I think that's what marketing really is putting yourself out there with what you do. Even if the intention isn't to be a marketer or marketing, when you put yourself out there and you talk about things and you do what you do, you are technically marketing yourself. So I get what you mean. Yeah.
And I suppose if you want to know everything about me, I've got a website, psychicadrian.com.
Okay. So as I said, I'm going to put all of this stuff in the description below. If you want to have a regression hypnosis therapy session or whatever else you would like to, tarot reading, because you can go into your past lives with tarot readings. You can go into it through Reiki. I mean, yeah, there's many ways you can access these different things, and each of them will give you some different flavor of, you know, past lives. So yeah.
So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you very much for being the 10th episode again. I appreciate it. If there's anything else you want to share, feel free. Or if not, then yeah, we'll slowly close off.
Is there anything that I want to share? I think if I can maybe give anybody some guidance out there who feels that maybe they would like to serve life and whatever. A big thing with spirituality is the belief that you have to be this spiritual person. You don't have to be spiritual like me. I draw tarot. You know, I do regression hypnosis. I do Reiki massages. But you don't have to do those things, because, you know, as I like to say, that if I need somebody to change my tires, I would prefer somebody who comes from a more spiritual approach as to somebody who says, you know, look at this motherfucker who's able to afford a car and I can't even afford a car, and I'm just going to mess his car up. So it's about serving, and it doesn't, you know, I think that spirituality in itself has become placed in such a box these days. And sometimes we take a lot of the dogmatic ways in which we practice through religion, for example, or traditional practices. We call ourselves spiritual and we kind of do the same thing again. So I would rather, you know, focus on self-development, what is right for me, you know, understanding that you is maybe broader than just you. And I think something that I've always said is that if you don't even have to be bothered by being any religious sort of person, any religion, because technically speaking, they basically say the same thing, be a nice person. So whether you're not interested in religion, traditions, dogmatic practice, spiritual practice, anything of that, if you can, with real good intentions, real authenticity, real morality, do your best to be a good citizen of planet Earth, you place yourself in that vibration where you're already vibing high, and life will go well for you. Even if you don't light a single incense, you don't touch a crystal, you never. It's all about really just, I think, essentially being human and embracing life, but doing so really from a point of morality and with actual genuine good intentions. Then you can't go wrong. You really can't, because you maintain good vibration.
We have a saying that says, always remember the divine and never forget the divine. So basically, that's what life should be about, is remembering the divine and bringing the divine into as many things as we can do as possible, you know? So whether you're a dentist, an artist, a baker, just do it all with a spiritual consciousness as best as you can. So if you want to meditate, go meditate. Or just like a mood of servitude is the best way to describe it. And yeah, as Adrian was saying, it's just be of service to the world around you. Doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter where you are. I mean, some of the best spiritual people that I've seen are people that have no home and just sit out on the street, and they just are so happy because their life is so simple, you know? So sometimes I think we tend to make our life very complicated with all the things we give ourselves. And, you know, life can be, actual spiritual life is actually very simple. It's just a connection with ourselves to the divine. And then we find a way to express that to the world through service. That's what spirituality is about, in whatever setting, whatever. Yeah.
I think in closing, I've got the saying that the most spiritual thing that you can do on this planet is to be human, because you came here to be human. You know, and whether you were some goddess in Atlantis or, you know, some big deal in Lemuria or whatever, on whatever planet, the bottom line is you are here now. And the simple truth is, yes, we know, obviously, there's something inside of us must know that there's more. But don't sacrifice where you are now in the hope of what you may get in the next life. Because what if there's nothing? Seriously, what if there's nothing? Then you didn't live this life either. You know, so whether there is something or there's not something, you're bound to find out. But you are here now. Live this, be this. Find out, where do I come from?
Do the best, be the best that you can here now. Yeah.
You know, who am I? Why am I here? Why the hell am I here? Where do I come from? What is my purpose?
And where am I going? Yeah.
And where am I going?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Adrian. Yes, again, just ending off, I am writing a book. I am planning to have it released on the 1st of March. It is called True Healing. If you would like to know more about it, or if you would like to order a copy, please do. You can message me via my social media links, Instagram, Facebook. 25% of the first 20 copies are going to an orphanage. So if you want to be a part of that journey, you can hop on board and purchase your copy. And yes, you can help the orphanage kids to have they need money for schooling, for food, for clothes, and all that stuff. So you can be a part of that journey if you want to be. So thank you very much for tuning into this episode. Thank you, Adrian. It was beautiful to have you here. Yeah, it's a great conversation.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Awesome.